Hi, I'm Deanna Joe, and welcome to my channel, Responsible Faith. Today's video is for people suffering with chronic pain and health problems, and also for those of you who have someone in your life who does. This might give you a little bit of insight into their battle. Obviously, as a Christian, I believe in healing, but realistically, we see that miracles and healing seem to be the exception rather than the norm. You can get to the point where you've been prayed for so many times for healing that it almost destroys your faith. And it's okay to take a break from that before it destroys your faith completely. While I believe God can do anything, it's also wise to turn our focus toward care and management in the meantime. If you've battled your health for any length of time, you already know the basics for managing your health conditions from a lifestyle standpoint, like diet and exercise, medications, doing the best you can to reduce stress levels. But even doing all of that, there are just going to be days where you're going to be sick and there's nothing we can do about it. And depending on your condition, you may have occasional days like this, or you may spend entire weeks of your life sick and housebound. So how do we get through life when it seems like we're living in survival mode? When there's no cure, and this is our life now. I've mentioned that I do believe faith is an extremely important part of coping with illness, but practical steps are also important, and that is what I'd like to talk about today. Anxiety, depression, and hopelessness are constant battles if you've been ill for very long, and I think we need to intentionally combat them. I want to clarify here, I am not talking about clinical depression or a diagnosed anxiety disorder. Obviously, those need to be managed professionally. I just wanted to share 7 things that I think are important and have helped me in my emotional health along the way. Number 1, I think our spiritual life is key. Prayer, worship music. Sometimes I'll go on YouTube and find music. Reading scripture and listening to encouraging teachings are all things that can encourage and feed us spiritually and be uplifting. But some days that does take more energy, clarity, and stamina than what we've got. Brain fog is a real thing. And if we're being perfectly honest, we have days where we are overwhelmed. Life seems very unfair, and we're not too happy with God. I know I felt frustrated with him at times. And there's so much we don't understand. And it's okay to have days like that. Sometimes he feels so far away. And then other times he feels very close to us in our suffering. Sometimes we'll pray and experience this peace that passes all understanding. And then other times we pray and nothing happens and it feels like we're going to lose our minds. And that's just the way it is. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose." It didn't say everything is good. Because it's not. Some things are terrible. But it says he works it all together for good. And I can trust that. Number 2, finding purpose. Now, some people can manage to work outside the home, others can't. It just depends on the severity of your condition. And it is important for us to feel useful, which is something that's kind of hard sometimes if you're sick. And some days we're going to just need to adjust our expectations. There will be times when resting is literally the only thing we can do. And other times we will be well enough to look around for something simple we can accomplish. Some examples of things we can do to purposefully give us a sense of control over at least some aspects of our life are helping others. A kind note or a card to let someone know you're thinking of them. You could give to charities. Become an advocate, even online, for a cause that you believe in, like homelessness or domestic violence shelters or animal rescue. These are all valuable contributions to the community. You can do creative projects, art. Do you paint? Do you draw? Do you do anything like that? Music, be it listening or playing or singing, journaling. renovating, I throw that in there, that's something we do. Knitting, learning new things, cooking, even refinishing a piece of furniture, just something creative where you can look and think, okay, I accomplished that. That's awesome. Organizational projects are key. You can organize and sort through your entire home, from closets to junk drawers, kitchen cabinets to bookcases. Just one thing at a time, one project at a time. And sometimes reducing external clutter has a calming effect emotionally. Not to mention that you can make a little spare money selling some items, which is important if your budget's a little tight because you can't work outside the home. And then other things, it will feel nice to be able to donate them to someone who needs them or to a worthy cause. If you're a schemer like me, you can also spend time making lists. You can, do budgets ahead of time, plan birthdays, scheme up renovations, plan for next Christmas. By the end of the day, you'll be up to your eyeballs in lists. But when the time comes for any of these events, you'll be ready. You'll have thought it through. I can actually remember feeling discouraged and overwhelmed in my 20s. I was actually sick quite a bit in my 20s. And I was wondering how difficult my life was going to be moving forward. And I came to the realization that happiness is a choice. It is not someplace we end up when everything finally starts to go right. That never happens. It pretty well has to be a conscious decision. So I started to look around for a project because, I needed something to bring purpose to my life. So I was pretty much housebound and broke at the time. But I looked out the window and I noticed all these flat rocks at the front of the property. And I decided to build a 12-inch high rock flower bed. And it was a free project with no timeline. It was perfect for me. Every day I felt well, I did a little bit more. It took an entire summer to finish. My daughter was actually 4 at the time, and she got pretty excited about the project. And so my mom bought her a little pair of kids' work gloves, and she called them her glubs. And every day I felt well. We went outside and we puttered and she played, and she loved having me out there with her every day. And she'd ride her bike, and her big thing was getting rides in the empty wheelbarrow back out to the rock pile every time I went for another load. And I had bought this cheap box of Freezies, and we would take our breaks sitting in the shade eating Freezies, and she would talk. She was a talker. And looking back, those are some of my favorite memories with her before she started school. By the time we were finished, we had built 3 large rock beds, gotten exercise and fresh air, and we'd spent precious time together. And she had learned the reward of hard work, and I had completely changed my outlook. The next spring, we also had fun planting flowers in them. And so that was something that really I look back on as kind of a turning point for me. The third thing would be gratitude. Now, I want to say up front, I do not want to discount the fact that some of us are going to have to grieve the loss of the life we had imagined. And that is hard, but it is very necessary. And even when you get to the point where you feel like you've thought a lot of it through and grieved it, it'll still come in waves at times. Sometimes you'll be doing fine and it'll just hit you, and you'll have to deal with it. And so I do not want to minimize that. But I also want to say that I think it's important to try to focus on our blessings instead of feeling sad all the time about our situation. Once I decided that, it really was a decision that really changed the way I thought. I started to actively remind myself of all the things I have to be thankful for, like my faith and the hope that it provides for me. My family, I live in a free country, even silly little things like chocolate and leggings and, my heating pad and a roof over my head. Not everybody has that. Money to buy groceries. I've always been someone who hates grocery shopping. And there's times I would go in the grocery store. I wasn't feeling all that great. I hated it. And I would catch myself and think, look at all this produce. Look at all this stuff. There are people all over the world, if they could be here right now, would feel like they were in heaven really. I'm thankful for nature. I love nature. I'm thankful for my husband. He's amazing. I'm thankful my health isn't worse than it is. We all have things we can be thankful for, and before long, it does kind of become a bit of a habit, and it helps our attitude. Philippians 4 verse 8 says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, pure, lovely, commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." It is important to take control over our thoughts to the best of our ability. Number 4 would be fun. Sometimes survival mode kicks in so hard we forget to actively pursue fun. I think this is an important one. And when you're sick, you can feel old before your time. We spend so much time being responsible and doing what's absolutely necessary that it's easy to lose ourselves. Fun is something we need to make time for and actively pursue. What do we enjoy? What makes us laugh? What makes us feel happy and young? It can be music, maybe nostalgic music that reminds you of when you were younger. I mean, I enjoy some good 80s music, good 90s music. Playing games. You know, some people have the ability to participate in sports at some level. Do that. That's great. Certain clothing items. I have a friend who gets sick and just veges in her Minion pajamas. I think they make her happy and they make her smile. Funny movies and books and light TV shows and hobbies that bring us joy and funny memes, and there's things on Pinterest, and even certain friends are just light and they make you laugh and they're great to be around. I saw a quote the other day that says, "Laughter is the shock absorber that eases the blows of life." And that is the truth. Number 5, combating guilt. And I will say up front, this one is hard, and I have not figured this one out yet, but I do know how important it is. Feelings of guilt and uselessness are heavy, and sometimes we feel like a burden to the people we love, and it is pretty common to think dark thoughts of how much better off our spouse would be had they married someone else, or our parents had they maybe never had us and didn't have to worry about us all the time, or maybe our kids, if they had a parent who was able to be, to do more things that we can't do. It stinks to feel like the cause of all the medical expenses, all the canceled plans, even the fact that not being able to work outside the home deeply affects the financial status of our households and puts the burden of pressure on our spouse, or in some cases, maybe on parents. That's tough. We want to be independent, but our life sometimes just turns out to be the complete opposite. And I hate that feeling. Learning to accept help is humbling. Very humbling, but it's necessary at times. Our value as people is not in what we do, it's in who we are, but it's hard to ignore those feelings. One comfort is that we know that no matter what we can or cannot do, we have great value to God. Luke 12:6-7 says, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, and not one of them is forgotten before God? Why, even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, you are of more value than many sparrows." Psalm 119:14-17 says, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. How precious to me," and some versions say, "how precious concerning me are your thoughts, O God. How vast the sum of them." It's comforting to know that the God of the universe loves us and we are of great value to him. Number 6 is connection. Emails, phone calls, visits, texts, social media, just maintaining friendships, and that is much harder to do when you're sick. Social isolation can be a big problem. I've heard it said that chronic illness can feel like an exile, and I found that to be true at times. I also think it's important to connect with other suffering people for support. There are blogs and support groups on Facebook, and maybe even within your local community that you could be a part of that might be a benefit to you. I can remember about 20 years ago coming across an online forum with people suffering from similar conditions to mine, And I read their comments and I sat and cried. It was the first time I'd felt understood. It was such a comfort to me, honestly. Support like that helps you not be destroyed by the people who expect too much from you or diminish what you're going through, or even in some cases, people who think you're faking the severity of your suffering. I always enjoy people who say things like, oh yeah, I have the same thing you do. I just do things anyway. I don't let it hold me back. Or, oh yeah, I understand I have that too. You know, it bothers me a couple of times a year. Yeah, we're dealing with the same thing, obviously. There's also people with helpful suggestions, you know, the ones who have a cousin with the same condition as you, and, you know, they stood on one leg under a full moon, ate 3 tulip bulbs boiled in rainwater and essential oils while making positive affirmations, and now they're completely better. So maybe if you try that, it'll help you too. Yeah, for sure. You know, you gotta love that free advice. Cue the multi-level marketing people who possess the miracle cure for whatever ails you, and luckily makes them money in the process. It's like a win-win. And then there's the religious people with their stupid questions like, no, Carol, it never crossed my mind in 25 years of being sick to pray about this. What great advice. You know, have you ever considered being a life coach? I mean, seriously. And I find some people in your life will speak healing and peace to you, and some negativity and judgment. And my advice would be cut out as many toxic people as you can. It's so important who we surround ourselves with. Sometimes you'll get lucky and find support in your community, but sometimes you'll find the people online, thousands of miles away, but they will become treasured friends. I would also like to note, if at all possible, you know, it's important to make time for face-to-face friendships as often as you can. It really helps us not get swallowed up by loneliness, but I've also noticed that it's a struggle for a lot of people now, considering how busy everyone's life is. There also may come times where it's all too much for you to deal with, and you may need to talk to a therapist, and there's no shame in that either. Number 7, the final one, is compassion. And I think it's easy for most of us to have compassion on others. In fact, I find suffering has a way of bringing that out. I'm convinced the biggest area we need to show compassion in our lives is with ourselves. We can be so hard on ourselves at times. Some of us have a real mean inner voice that says things to us we would never say to other people. Proverbs 16:24 says, gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Maybe we need to start speaking to ourselves with gracious words. Resigning yourself to the fact that you're going to miss appointments, special events, and people may feel let down by you are all very hard things to deal with. Letting go of perfectionism is hard. You know, your house is what it is. So your kids had cereal for supper last night. They're fine. It's no big deal. They'll live. We're not going to be perfect. Nobody is, no matter what their social media presence implies. And we just need to learn to give ourselves grace. There's going to be days we don't have the energy to do anything, and we're going to need to be kind and comforting to ourselves. Give yourself permission to rest. I know that can be really hard, to let yourself rest in a world that glorifies busyness. I have special things for days like that. My favorite PJs, my soft blanket, a stash of snacks, movies, old TV shows, 80s and 90s shows, mysteries and cop shows. I mean, I like bring on the cheesy shows. That's my thing. Make your terrible days as good as they can possibly be. And one way to do that is to plan to be sick ahead of time. And I know that sounds weird, but you know it's going to happen. So oftentimes I'll cook ahead. I do like homemade soups, and I freeze them in individual portions so I don't have to worry about meals, and I have something healthy to eat if I'm not, I'm having a rough day. I will make sure I have a little stash of treats, maybe a little ginger ale to settle my stomach. I try to keep my house not too crazy messy because that's a big thing for me. I can't stand clutter. And so, You know, even if my floor needs a good scrubbing, as long as there's not a bunch of stuff everywhere, I'm cool and I can relax and not be stressed by my house while I'm sick. And it's good to have any medications you might need and your heating pads or cold packs, depending on what you need. So you can just hunker down and wait for the storm to pass. You're doing the best you can. And your feelings are normal and valid. And most importantly, you're not alone. There's a community of us out here battling our own bodies, and sometimes I think not feeling alone really is the most important thing. So I hope this video was encouraging and useful to you, and if you enjoyed it, you can hit like, and if you'd like for YouTube to notify you whenever I put out a new video, you can subscribe and hit the little notification bell. So I hope you have a good day today.